to my workshop. My name's Andy Trice, and this is my entry for the Great Guitar Build-Off of 2021. So behind me real quick, that's my entry for last year's build-off. And so I just want to show that real quick because I had a great time building that, but also this year's entry is similar in concept that it's actually the same physical piece of wood that I used for last year's. This is cut off of the same log, this flame spalted maple, but it's an entirely different guitar. So this is a standard electric guitar. I say standard in quotes, standard electric guitar. It is a cherry body with inlaid walnut and maple. It's chambered, so it's hollow here and hollow here. And then it's got a flame spalted maple top with a walnut veneer in between the cherry body and the maple top. It's only about 1 3/4 inches thick. And weighs less than 6 pounds. So it's coming in, it's actually pretty light. It's very comfortable to play, even though it's got a real fat neck. It's got a 21 inches at the nut and a little over 23 at the 12th fret. I tried to model it after the classic fat C shape because that's what I really like. I like the way it sounds. I feel like it gives a lot of sustain, but I also like the way that it feels in my hands, especially with a pretty medium to heavy gauge string on it. Let's see. It is a 5-layer multi-laminate neck, so cherry, walnut, maple. It is a Paduke fingerboard, which you might not be able to see in this terrible lighting in here right now, but it's got this really rich red color, and I'll make sure that there's other pictures in here so you can see it better. There is a walnut veneer also in between the fingerboard and the multi-layer neck, because I wanted to continue that walnut veneer, that walnut stripe that's added for contrast throughout the entire guitar. In fact, it goes all the way down, all the way through to the headstock. And on the headstock, we have again the flamed spalted maple with a floral pattern. I did an ink transfer onto the headstock, so it's got this nice floral pattern. The pickups are Gretsch blacktop Filtertrons. Electronics are pretty standard. There's volume, tone, 3-way selector. It's a fixed bridge with through body strings and Grover open back tuners. So I think it plays fantastic, it sounds fantastic, I'm excited about it. It hasn't even had strings for 24 hours yet, actually not even 12 hours yet. I just finished it last night. So it's still kind of settling in. I haven't dialed it in, I haven't dialed in the action, but you know, it still plays great and it sounds great. So I'll go ahead and you can check out the build video here, and I will do a little demo at the end, and then I'll do a proper demo once I've got everything really intonated properly. I've got the action set after the Great Guitar Build-Off is over. But definitely please come back and check it out. So without further ado, check out my build video. Thanks. I started with this template that I've used in prior builds. Made a blank out of cherry, and then routed out the chambering so it's a semi-hollow body. You can see it actually cleaned up fairly nicely here. And this is where things started to go south. I actually started this in the winter, and when I inlaid some stripes for decorative effect, the glue chalked, which means it was essentially a bad glue joint. So I had to route that back out, and it sat on my shelf for months, and finally decided to go ahead and use it for my Great Guitar Build-Off entry. And then inlaid new stripes of walnut and maple into the cherry body. Next, I did the neck blank. So this is a 5-layer cherry, walnut, and maple neck. Cherry on the outsides, 2 walnut stripes, and maple in the center. Then I went ahead and I added a scarf joint here. I think I did about 11 or 12 degree break angle. Then I book matched the spalted flame maple top. This is actually the same piece of wood I used in last year's Great Guitar Build-Off entry. So then you can see here, cleaned up that joint and then started preparing it for glue. Next I had to start getting the body further along, so I went ahead and carved the rear axis panel. And then I prepared the top for gluing. I put a walnut veneer in between the cherry body and the maple top to give it a nice border and add some contrast in the lines of the body. You can see here I worked on preparing the fretboard, so cutting fret slots. Just like the body, I put a walnut veneer in between the neck blank and the fretboard, again just to give it a little bit extra contrast once it's all finished. Once the glue was dry, I could go ahead and route the truss rod channel, as you can see here. I had to do a little extra cleanup on the end just to make sure that it fit, and then went ahead and used a drill to allow for truss rod access. Up next was gluing on the ears for the headstock. This allows for a headstock that's actually wider than the neck blank. And then it was time to use my templates to start putting in the actual shape of the neck. So try and remove as much material as possible with the bandsaw, and this makes your routing easier down the road. Here you can see I'm using the same technique to apply my headstock shape. Next, it was time to start roughing out my neck profile. So did some measuring, put some guidelines in, and hogged off as much material as I could with the bandsaw. And then before actually carving the neck, it was time to glue on the fretboard. So you can see here I drilled some guide pins and then installed the truss rod and then applied glue and glue on the fretboard. At the same time, I also went ahead and glued on 2 veneers on the headstock, again adding a layer of walnut for continuity and also visual contrast. So now it's time to start cleaning up and shaping the neck. Everything from planing on the sides to making sure that the nut slot is properly carved, drilling access for the truss rod, and finally doing the actual carve of the neck profile. I used a Shinto grasp to start the carve and then a spoke shave to remove the material in between the 2 profiles that I created. And of course clean up with chisels and files. Next, I radiused the fretboard. This was actually supposed to be a 12-inch radius, but the radius block I got was actually a 14-inch radius. So I ended up with a 14-inch radius on this build. Up next, I installed fret markers on the 12th and 24th frets, and then did side dot inlays. For all of them, it's aluminum tubing inlaid with epoxy and a white stone pigment. I think they turned out pretty nice. Then I installed the frets. These are stainless steel frets, and there is a layer of wood glue underneath of them just to fill any empty space. And then scraped the fretboard just to make sure that any residue is gone, and then went ahead and cleaned up the fret ends. Next, it's time to set the neck. So I taped off the area of the top that I didn't want glue to get on, and then went ahead, put some tight bond in there and glued it together. With the neck set, then it was time to start measuring for the bridge, and once the bridge was in, then I could start figuring out where the pickup cavities would go. For decorative effect, I did an ink transfer of a floral pattern onto the headstock. I really like how this turned out. And then went ahead and started putting a couple coats of oil onto the body. I think I ended up with about 8 coats on the body and 6 coats on the neck. hitting them every few coats with some 800 grit sandpaper just to knock back any inconsistencies. Then I applied some black acrylic paint to the inside of the pickup cavities and used my drill press as a makeshift lathe to turn the control knobs. Then right before final assembly, I went ahead and addressed any issues with the frets. So I leveled, crowned, and polished the frets, got rid of all high spots, made sure that they were really dialed in, just because that's what's really going to make a difference in how the guitar plays. I then treated the fretboard with lemon oil. You can see it really makes that grain shine and brings out the red color in the Paduk. And then started installing the tuning pegs, as you can see here. These are open back Grover tuning pegs. I guess they're more traditionally associated with acoustic guitars, but yeah, they turned out really nice on this one. And then I continued by installing the bridge. This is a string through bridge with a back ferrule. This actually gave me a little bit of trouble drilling those holes because the body is too big for my drill press, but was able to work that out. And then I went ahead and shielded the cavity with some copper foil tape before going ahead and soldering together the electronics. It is 1 volume, 1 tone, and a 3-way selector switch. And finally, it was time to string it up and test it out. Let's hear how it sounds. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and please vote for me in the Great Guitar Build-Off. Thanks, everyone.